So, hello and welcome to today's webinar, which is called Resilient Children and Resilient Parents. And with us today are two of the speakers at the recent Coaching Connect conference, Debra Simmons and Ali Scott. And so I thought just to start off with Debra and Ali, it would be lovely just to get a little bit of background about who you are and why you're interested in the topic of resilient children and resilient parents and what that actually sort of means to you. And then what we'll do is we'll move into talking about what this actually means in practice and what you've seen for yourselves. So Debra, can I start with you? Just a little bit of a potted history and background, and I'm sure you'll share more stories during the webinar. But what has you here today?
Well, I think from as young as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was be a mum. When I was 11, I decided I was going to have a little girl called Gemma Kate. And I have got a Gemma Kate, and Gemma Kate is now 33, so she's no longer little. She's a grown-up. Yeah, and I went on to have two more children, and that was very much, I kind of saw my life as being a mum, but I saw myself as being a perfect mum with perfect children and, a white picket fence, and that wasn't the reality. That wasn't how it turned out. I ended up being in a very, very unhealthy relationship, and all three of my children grew up not in great circumstances. It wasn't great in our house. There was a lot of rules. There was a lot of manipulation. There was a lot of not nice things went on in our house when the three of them were growing up. And my youngest son, is actually his birthday today. He's 20 today, my youngest, and he's banging around in the background. So yeah, we might hear from him. And I've got another daughter in the middle. And by the time that I got out of that relationship and began to parent them, my eldest daughter was, she would have been 20 at that time. And then my youngest daughter was 17 and my son was 9 and I found myself on my own trying to parent these three children. And I was very much told that I was damaged and that they were damaged, and everything that happened to us during the 20 years I was in this relationship, everything that had happened, had come together to make a right mess. So my dream was quite shattered at that point. So it was quite a revelation for me to come across these principles and actually see that even at the ages that my children had got to, even sort of, because once you're a mum, to your children for life, whatever age they are. Me and Ali were talking about this, it doesn't kind of stop. I'm still their mum, whatever age they are, and you're still a parent, but, trying to actually be a parent and be a role model for these, what I was told were damaged children and me, and coming across these principles and having all of that blown out of the water and seeing that my children were resilient, are resilient, and so am I, and that we were perfectly okay in spite of all this, and to actually then to have moved forward over the years and to have completely turned that round. I have three beautiful, healthy adult children who are thriving in their lives. Not saying they don't have their ups and downs, but they're brilliant and they are thriving. So that's what's kind of, I would love to share this, because I know as parents we can feel very, very guilty if things happen to our children that we feel we're responsible. I mean, I know I carried a lot of guilt, and I just think if one parent can hear this and see that there's something within them and something within their children, and it's so easy to turn this all around and to just, we've got a great relationship now, and haven't got the white picket fence, but life's good.
And that's great, Debra, because I think that, in anybody's book, the domestic abuse that you went through as your children were growing up, in anyone's book would be a really tough shout to go through, and that you can sit here now with adult children who lived through that, seeing that resilience, which we're going to explore what you mean by that in a second, but seeing that, I think is a really powerful message. And you talk about the principles. I know we want to talk about that in a second as well, what we mean by principles and what those actually are. So if you pick that up and you think, what are these principles? Well, we're going to share that in a second. So Debra Simmons, you're one of our speakers today, and also Ali Scott. So Ali, just tell us a little bit about you and why you were inspired to contribute to this particular topic today.
Yeah, hello, and hi Catherine. I thought you were making a cow costume. But I love what Debra shares, and I think the kind of almost extreme end of what you and your children went through is, for me, proof that this works for everyone, you know. And my children haven't experienced that kind of level of domestic difficulties, but they have been through an awful lot in their little lives, and they are 7 and 8, and I've moved house, 10 times in 10 years, as Liz knows, and been through divorce. I've been through an illness that kind of had me in a wheelchair for a while when they were very little. I've been through an awful lot of my son is on his 4th school already. He's only 8. My daughter's on her 3rd school. So I did the same thing. I had such a loss of guilt, such a loss of mum guilt, and really thought that it was possible that I had broken my children in some way, or that it was my fault. And even from when I first had Ollie, before I was kind of into this understanding, I was very postnatal after Ollie. I just couldn't relax around my children. I couldn't be okay. I thought I was feeling all of their feelings, picking up on all of their anxiety. And I lived my life in a total state of kind of fight or flight for the first few years of their existence, really. And just really scared all the time, really anxious, really fearful of what they might be going through, hypervigilant. And, and what I can see now is how much I was trying to fix and change and improve their feelings, but really my feelings, and how that's neither possible nor necessary. And seeing their innate well-being and their resilience, which I know we're going to sort of talk about some more, seeing the truth of who we all really are just has taken away that pressure that I felt to really try and have them feel differently to how they're feeling. Now my kids can have tantrums, and I don't always love it, but it's fine. My daughter, I cut my daughter's hair the other day, and she was in my face like this close, screaming, "I hate you," at the top of her lungs. And I can honestly say I was absolutely okay with it. And it played out and it transformed. So I'm just I feel that what I really, really want to help parents with is just to regain a sense of that ease and peace and grace, I suppose, in parenting. Doesn't have to be quite as bad as we make it out to be.
Well, I think what you both highlight there, which is I guess probably any parent is very aware of, is that sense almost of feeling guilty as a parent, like I should have been able to protect my children, or they shouldn't feel upset, or whatever you do to yourself as a parent, that feeling of guilt. And one of the things I really love about having both Ali and Debra here on the call is that you actually have age ranges of children, like from youngsters all the way up through to adults. So you're talking about parenting at any age, because you never stop being a parent. I guess that's really key. So just to start off with, though, I think one of the things, Ali, you just said there, which really intrigues me, is you talked about not feeling like you need to fix your children's feelings, and that sort of resonates with me. What can you just expand on that a bit more? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what I mean by that is I used to really think that I needed to change how they were feeling, and I thought I kind of had two sides to it. I thought that it was because I wanted them to feel better. And I thought, I don't want them to be anxious, upset, unhappy, scared, whatever. I don't want that for my child, because that's horrible, that's nasty, those feelings aren't good. So I want to change their experience to have them feel a different way. And so then I tried to do that. And I don't know if you've tried to do that, but it's really ineffective and difficult and practically impossible. But what I really saw was actually I wasn't really trying to change their feelings for them. I was trying to have myself feel better because I couldn't handle their emotion. So when they were stressed or angry or anxious or even crying for too long, it wasn't really them that I wanted to change. It was me. It was the fact that I couldn't handle the meltdown, or I couldn't handle the tears, or I couldn't handle the anxiety. So I couldn't handle somebody else's experience. And when I started to see that a little bit more clearly for what that was, I thought, first of all, we don't really ever know what someone else is experiencing. We think we can feel their pain and know what it's like, but we just can't. We just can't ever do that. So we're putting all of our stuff onto what they're feeling, and then we're kind of making it our own. And we then find that we can't handle how we're feeling because of how they're feeling. And I just found that so fascinating when I started to sort of pull that apart a little bit, because I can see there's two things going on. The one thing is that we can't handle feelings. We think that feelings are too big or too scary, or that there's something we need to do with them. We think we can't handle feelings. And I've seen that that's just completely not true. And that as humans, we're designed to handle any feeling, and we can handle any feeling. We just label some as bad and some as good, and we try and shy away from the bad ones, but they're all the same. They're all made of the same stuff, and they can't hurt us, harm us. So that was the one thing that I saw. And when I saw that in my children, I thought, well, them being anxious can't hurt them. Them being in a big meltdown can't hurt them. It is just feelings. It's just feelings like happiness or joy or whatever. We don't question the happy ones, we question the sad ones. So I started to really see through that and see that actually what I want for my children to be able to do is to have the emotion and to have it change, and to feel the ebb and the flow, and to know that no emotion is ever permanent, no feeling lasts forever, but to feel that for themselves. Whereas I feel like what I used to do in the beginning, and I think we all do quite innocently, is try and stop that feeling in its tracks. So a child is sad, what do we try and do? We distract, we give them sweets, we try and make them feel better. And by doing that, we're never really letting them see the nature of thought feeling. We're just kind of trying to suppress it or manipulate it. And I think that's really denying the child that beautiful experience of knowing that they're okay without the lollipop, and that's not to say I'd never comfort my child who was crying, that's just heartless, right? But, for them to see that through, I think for me was a really big thing. We all tend to want to stop it, whether we think we're doing it for their sake or really we're kind of doing it for us. We want to stop it. And to see the beauty now of allowing Robin to have a big meltdown, just really letting it happen. I used to be so scared of letting it happen because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where it would end. And, how is this going to ever end? This kind of, and she's there screaming that she hates me and that's horrible and that's not okay. And now I'm like, that's just in the moment. And what I find ironically now is that it's over far more quickly because it's not been pushed aside.
And I really like what you're saying there, Ali. What I'm hearing is that you're so much more aware now of the ebb and flow of feelings, thought coming and going. And I guess what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that because you understand how resilient children are, and because you understand that the very natural way that feelings come and go, that you no longer need to rescue them or inadvertently rescue you because you're worried that they might not be able to cope, or you might not be able to cope with them coming up against a really tough feeling. So I really see that. And Debra, I wonder if there's something that you maybe would like to add to what Ali's saying here.
I can really see, that the same was true for me. I really, after I got out of my relationship and I began to feel better, it became really, really important to me to make my children feel better. That was kind of my mission. I had seen it was like, you have to feel better. You have to feel good. And actually, like Ali was saying, the more we try to do that, all that does is perpetuate the feeling, really. It very often keeps them there more so. And seeing my resilience and bringing it back to me and knowing that I'm okay, then that kind of gave them space to find their own resilience. It's like if we go there, we lead people there, whereas when we're trying to shove and push and make it happen, it's way more difficult. But if we just be, you know, if we concentrate on our okayness and we see that, yes, no matter what is going on for them, no matter what is going on, and anybody, you know, this is true of anybody that's around you, if you can stay, you know, if you can recognize your own resilience in these situations and also recognize that you have these feelings too. You know, my feelings come and go. You know, I get nervous or anxious and go in and out of these things, but it's recognizing both in recognizing what happens in me, so I know that's what's happening in them, and knowing that our default setting is peace or happiness or clarity or whatever it is you want to call those nicer sort of feelings. That's our default, that we come back to this place of just maybe acceptance, okayness. In my world, I call it okayness a lot. You know, it's where I come back to, and I've seen it again and again, you know, however far with, because, you know, adults, we pretend we don't have temper tantrums, but, you know, there's the odd time when I want to stamp my feet and spit, you know. But we go there, but then we come back to this place. Our okayness never actually went anywhere. You know, we kind of went off on one for a bit, but that's always there. And it's recognizing it, that in our children. And one of the things that really came up for me around my children was the realization that I love them way too much to worry about them.
You need to say a bit more about that, Deborah. You love them way too much to worry about them, because I can imagine for some parents they're saying, what? That's how I show them I love them, as I worry about them. So what do you mean?
Well, I think we've truly got that backwards, that, you know, we've kind of got it set up that the more we worry about people, the more we intervene with them, the more we try and fix them. That is how we've got it set up, that means that we love them. And what I have really seen, like Ali said, seeing this the other way is just another way of putting it, I suppose. I've seen that totally from the other side. Actually, if I truly love my children, I will just step back and connect to my resilience and my okayness, know that that's in me. And, you know, I love them, that's it, that's a given, that's just there, there's nothing, and I don't have to worry about them to prove that I do. And in fact, when we get into that place and we're concerned and we're living, I mean, Ali said that she lived with this anxiety and being in this place. When we are living like that and we're continually like on alert to make sure everything's okay, you know, we're not coming from a deeper place within ourselves. It's really difficult to kind of just love somebody when you're in your head trying to make sure everything is okay all the time. So if we just drop that whole worry, that whole making sure everything's okay, we can just come from a way nicer place. And it's like worrying about them just gets in the way of just loving them and just being with them and allowing them to just do the same.
So Ali, I don't know if you've got anything you'd like just to add to what Deborah's saying there.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love you way too much to worry about you. I think I really, really loved it when you said, we had a chat the other day and mentioned it then. And I just think exactly that. Worrying is really a way of trying to control the uncontrollable. And we sort of all know at some level that there's no point to worrying. We sort of know that, but there's a real depth to that us worrying about someone else just does exactly what you said. It just puts us up in our heads. It gives us all this future-based made-up thinking about scenarios and things that may or may never happen, and doesn't allow us to live from wisdom and from truth, doesn't allow us that space to live from love and just to kind of be in the presence of that child or those children. It just clutters all our minds with thoughts of what if. And I just see that, yeah, I completely agree. I think we think that worrying is a good thing, and it's all parents ever say, isn't it? Well, you're always going to worry about them, or you never stop worrying about them, and you know, and like it's a life sentence to have to sort of worry about these creatures that you've produced, you know. And I just think seeing that separateness from us is really important. Someone said to me the other day that we borrow our children for a short time from their lives. And I thought that was so powerful. You know, they are our children and we never stop being their parents, but we don't have, their lives are not our lives. And I think we can get so tied up into that. You know, their feelings are our feelings, their sadness is our sadness, their pain is our pain, and they're on their completely own separate journey from their life. And we have them, we borrow them from their lives, but we have to give them back to their lives. And in that space, there's no worrying required at all.
And Ali, I think that what I'm what I'm curious about as well is that we talk about the term resilience, and my hunch is that for most people, resilience is something that you build up. It's something that you need to go through tough circumstances. It's almost like a muscle. So the more tough stuff you go through, the more resilient you are. And I'd love, but for both of you, Ali and Debra, just to reflect on what we're talking about resilience, because we're actually pointing to something very different, I think, than is culturally understood by resilience. So, Ali, are you happy just to go first to explain what you mean, and then Debra, if you could pick up after that?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're constantly kind of asking or wondering how we can build resilience in children, aren't we? Or how we can build resilience, like you said, like a muscle, like something to do to get it, and it's out there in the world somewhere, and we have to sort of pull it towards us in some way. But the way I certainly see it now is that resilience is actually who we are. It's kind of what we are. We are resilient by nature. There's nothing that we need to do to become resilient. And in a way, the proof of that is the fact that we're here and that we've coped with everything up till now, and we're doing just fine. You know, and even if we don't think we're doing just fine, we're only ever a thought away from it. We're so close. We are resilience. We are love. We are, you know, I don't like always to use this word, but we are God. We are this formless energy that it can't be anything but resilient. It can't be anything but that. And when we're running around in what we think is the real world, trying to build up resilience, we're just bolstering an illusion. We're just trying to sort of create this made up version of what resilience looks like, and there's no power in that because there's no truth in it. And I know this just sounds like words when you haven't really seen it for yourself, but resilience is just within all of us all the time. We are built for reality. We are built with resilience. It's in babies when they learn to walk. It's in us. It's just there the whole time. And so for me, it's more a stripping away of what's getting in the way of that, rather than having to add things on to have us feel more of that.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say there, Ali, is that it's almost built into us. It not even built in, it is who we truly are. It's like resilience is the core and essence of who we are. And so we don't need to try and find it or chase it outside of ourselves. It's more of a recognition that that's within us. Yeah. And then linking up with what you said before is that when you see that in yourself, like when you see that you are resilient, that's who you truly are, then you can see that in your children. And so then I guess when your daughter is screaming in your face saying, I hate you, that you're kind of, I mean, you don't want that to happen, but you're seeing beyond that. You're seeing beyond that to who she truly is.
Truly is, and that's exactly it. In that particular example, it happened 2 nights ago, so I can remember it quite clearly. And we cut an inch off her hair, and when she needed a haircut, it was an inch off her hair, and she suddenly looks in the mirror. My hair is so short, and she just turned to me, and she'd gathered all this hair off the floor, and she was trying to stick it together and put it back on her head, and all I could see was this kind of, just behind that, I could see that that's just what her thought was doing in the moment. But behind that, the constant space of who she really was unchanged and untouched by anything that was going on. And if I can see that in her, then I'm in a much better place to sort of have her look in that direction too. You know, if I'm joining her in this hair mess, then we're going to get nowhere fast at all. You know, she's innocently trying to fix a feeling, you know, by the tantrum. That's what that's all about. She's trying to find her way back to feeling okay. It's innocent. That's what she's trying to do. And if I join her in that, and if I don't see that she's okay, if I start going, oh my God, let's try and stick the hair back on your head to have you feel better, then that's an example of what we try and do all the time, isn't it? To try and fix the unfixable, to have somebody feel better, when actually the better is just behind all that anyway.
It's just behind the explosion of stories and thoughts and horror movies that people kind of create in their head. So I love what you're saying there about resilience. And Debra, if I could ask you the same question, you know, resilience, what is it that resonates for you around resilience? What do you mean by that as a parent, and what you see in your children?
Well, I can see now with retrospect, looking back over their lives, that their resilience, and as I say, in my world, I kind of call it okayness, because that makes more sense to me. But I can see that was always there. You know, when I look back at what was going on for us and when they were small and everything, the whole time it was like there were certainly moments of complete peace and complete okayness and everybody being fine. And I can pick those out all the time throughout. However bad things got, we just continue. You know, we're like one of those Weebles, you know, those things that wobbles and you kind of push it right over and ping, 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 back up, and ping, 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 ping. We just keep kind of coming back to that place. And I think what happens is we are told so much from the outside and innocently, and I know I definitely did this to my children. We are kind of told that the things that happen to us do damage us and do break us. So we're trying to live that. That's what we're trying to do, because we've been taught that if these things happen, then you are damaged. And then we have these, we feel panicked, we have panic attacks, and there's our proof. Oh yeah, I am. There's something wrong with me. I'm definitely damaged. And so we keep taking, it's like we are trying to be this upright, and we keep taking ourselves back to me. But this resilience that we have all got, this built-in, it just keeps bringing us back. And no matter what happens, it just keeps bringing us back. And what we tend to be very, very good at doing when we're not looking for that and we're not seeing that, is keep looking for the places where we wobble. Oh yeah, that's reality. You know, when I'm down like this and feeling rubbish and anxious or whatever it is, that's the reality. And when we come back here, when we come self-right and we feel okay and this resilience is kicked in, you know, as soon as we go back down again, we're kind of like, what? Whoa, where was I? I was away with the fairies there, where I thought I was okay for a minute. Of course I'm not okay. I've had all this terrible stuff. I'm damaged. What was I thinking that I was okay? And yet it persists. You know, it doesn't. And what I've noticed the opposite way around is that resilience, that okayness persists. When we start looking in that direction, the other stuff falls away. It stops persisting. So it looks to me like that's the reality of it, because the truth and the reality of our resilience and of our okayness, that actually, no matter what we threw at it, no matter what we did to it, didn't go away. And yet the more we look in that direction, that's not to say we don't ever have ups and downs, but they tend to just be little wobbly wobbles, rather than, you know, the places where I have been with my kids, the things, you know, all that, there's just so much of that has just gone from our lives, just completely gone. And so it absolutely looks to me that the truth, the resilience, this love, this what we are, is the truth of who we are. And as soon as we begin to look in that direction, it floods in from everywhere.
So I'm kind of curious about that, Debra. So, you know, for people that don't know your story, you went through an abusive relationship, and your children, all the psychologists, when you fled that relationship, were warning you and your children that you were going to basically be psychologically damaged for life, and this was about managing your hurt, your upset, your psychological damage. That was almost like the best case scenario. And I just want you, I love it if you could just put it in your own words, that what I'm hearing here is you're saying something very different. This isn't about managing the wobbles. This is about seeing something very different. So I'd love you just to sort of say that again, because I think this is a really important point.
Yeah, well, when we went through quite a lot of counselling, when we, you know, when I got out of that relationship, me and the children had a lot of counselling, and at that time we were told, I mean, between us, there was some self-harming going on, there was night terrors, panic attacks, all that sort of thing. There was a lot of that for, you know, within all of us, really. We were all kind of in that place, and during the counselling we were taught, you know, breathing techniques and things to focus on and things to do, you know, when this happened. And we were sort of told that, you know, night terrors and panic attacks were probably going, we could have those at any time for the rest of our life, that sort of thing. It was high, and it was very much about teaching us what to do to, you know, to manage that situation. And I was told that my children would always live with the after effects of what had happened to them. And so it was a massive, I mean, I talked about the guilt earlier. You know, you can imagine as a parent, as anybody really, being told that something you have done has permanently damaged. It's bad enough if you think you've permanently damaged yourself, but if you think you've permanently damaged somebody that you love the most in the world, you know, it's horrible. And to actually see you know, when I came across this understanding, this that we're pointing towards, when I saw that just wasn't true, when I saw that our resilience is what is there, this, you know, this okayness is the foundation of who we are. And surprisingly quickly after me seeing that, even when I couldn't articulate it, and even when I would fall out of it and think, no, I must be mad, you know, we must be damaged, I must be wrong. But even with all that going on, I've watched my children self-right so quickly, you know, to be just, and it was that whole time when we were being told that we weren't resilient, told that what had happened to us would affect us all the time. We were just taking on that as truth, but we were just wearing that on top of the absolute truth, which is this resilience, this okayness, this thing that we are, that is way more than that. So it was, you know, it's been brilliant to see them blossom as such lovely adults. And you met my daughter. She, you know, I'm a little bit biased, so maybe people are kind of thinking, you know, yeah, but and their mom, you know, but they truly are really, they're lovely people. And it's just been amazing to me to see that. And I know some people might be with the whole worry thing and everything. One of the questions that I often get asked is how? You know, how do you not worry about your kids? My eldest daughter lives in London, and when she first went there, you know, it was a friend of mine sort of said, how do you sleep at night knowing that she's on her own in a bed sit in London? You know, how do you do that? And the how of these principles is, it's not a doing. It is something that because it is the truth, because it is underneath anything, and when we look towards it, it shows itself. That's what I've seen happen. When I woke up to the possibility that my children were all right, I began to see tons of evidence of that being true. It just began to present itself to me. And then when I kind of looked at myself and, you know, is there a possibility that actually you're okay, you're not damaged too? And it's almost, as soon as we awaken to the possibility that there can be something different there, that something different shows up. And it's built into our language to kind of say that we are not, you know, the way that we talk to each other, the things that we do. And it's catching ourselves sometimes and kind of seeing, you know, there's so many things that we think are fixed. and definitely worrying about our children. Like Ali said, most of us, it feels like it comes when you become a parent. Part of the sentence is, well, you're going to worry for life. And we do actually talk to each other like that in a way, oh, well, you're never going to stop worrying about your children, are you? Well, I know I'm going to be their parent until the day I die. But what I also know is that it's not a built-in. I've seen just being curious about that. Is that true that I have to worry about them? Is it? And I think when we just look at that and ask ourselves that question, the answers present themselves, in my experience, if we are open to that.
Yeah, and I really like what you're saying there, because I know that certainly with my parents and Stu's parents, that particularly the mums, there is a kind of, well, if I'm not worrying about it, it's like worry equates to love. The more I worry about you, the more I'm loving you, sort of thing. Yeah. And this is what you're pointing to is very different. And the other thing that I've just picked up in what both of you have been saying is that, if culturally we believe that children can be damaged, if we believe, like psychologically damaged, like if we believe that is true, and if we spend our whole lives trying to protect them, then because we don't want them to be hurt, then it's almost like we're always going to be in that state of uptightness and tension, because we're forever trying to manage their lives. And what you're saying here now, I really want to be clear, because what we're saying here is it's almost like seeing the psychological resilience, the psychological okayness. We're not saying that it's good that your children get hurt. We're genuinely not saying that, but we're saying that we're looking for something that is the core of who they are. A bit like you were saying about the Weebles. The Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. That shows my age. I remember that advert.
Yeah.
But it's almost that's what we're pointing to, is that the core of who we are and who our children are is this okayness, this resilience. And when we see that, it means we can relax and then allow them just to enjoy growing up and becoming humans and just enjoying life as it is. So I'm really seeing that. So this is just an opportunity now. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but if any of our participants would like to ask questions, now is a good time to do it. You can use the chat facility, and then I can bring you in either to ask the question on your behalf, or you can ask the question of either Debra or Ali. But I just wanted to sort of talk. We've been talking about these principles, and it's almost like they sound like sort of, I don't know, magic fairy dust or something like. And I know that there'll be people listening who'll be going, well, what are these principles? What are you talking about? I don't really understand. So, Debra and Ali, I'd like you both to have a stab at, just sharing how you might describe them in a nugget, what we're talking about here. So, who would like to go first, Ali or Debra?
I don't mind going first. I actually now very rarely talk about the principles in terms of them in that way, because although that's how I came across this whole understanding, I often find it confuses my head more than clears it. So, but my understanding of this whole is more the inside out nature of life, and the fact that we are basically living in the feeling of thought energy taking form in the moment. So the reality that we think we're living in isn't really the reality that we're living in. And that was quite a big, and that really pertains to what we were just saying about the worries that we have, the seeing behind what we think is kind of going on to the truth of who we really are. And what I see, there's one principle, the three principles, mind, thought, and consciousness. Mind, to me, is really, really key, is that we're all connected to one source of energy, of wisdom, of power, whether it's, call it God or source or spirit or chi or universal energy or formless energy. Everyone calls it different things, but the fact that we're all coming from that place, we're all the same energy, to me, that's where I find most sense of of being and knowing and coming from that space, from living from mind, being aware that that's the truth of life. And we see that all around us all the time, in nature, in the world. We see mind, this energy at play all the time, the leaves falling off the trees, the seasons changing, the babies growing in tummies. We see it all around us. We are also connected to that. And if we kind of can get to see that a bit more clearly, and somehow there's nothing to do and try and see that, but when we can drop out of some of our habitual thinking and see that there's more going on behind the scenes, that we're connected to a deeper source, we're connected to mind, that there's something that gives, that does something to us. That, for me, it grounds me entirely. It has me feel that there's a huge safety net that I didn't know was there before, that there's always, it's almost like you fall back into something beautiful rather than falling back into the unknown. And from that place, it just seems that everything else feels a lot more clear. So that's not really an explanation of the three principles, but to me, that's one of the most important parts of this understanding. And the other part is that we're living in thought energy, and thought being a form of energy that ebbs and flows all the time. And whatever thought is doing and coming, however that's coming through us, we're going to have a feeling that's created by that. So we're not living in the world, we're living in thought about the world. And so that, to me, again, is a really important kind of distinction. And it pertains to the fact that that's how everyone sees the world so differently. There isn't one objective reality out there that we're experiencing. It's all coming to us via thought. So that to me has massive implications for parenting.
Yeah. And what you're pointing to there, Ali, and I love this, is that you're pointing to the bit that has us all be the same. It's like the common denominator for all of us is that there is some greater intelligence, something that seems to be living us, which we're calling mind. People might call God or energy or chi, I don't know all the terminology. And then the other area that I'm really hearing you, that resonates for you around the principles, and again it's the same for all of us, is that we are all living in our own reality, which is generated through this kind of power of thought. And we experience thought flowing through us through the feelings that we have. And one thing is for sure is that we are all experiencing thought in the moment. What we don't know is what form that thought is taking in anybody else. So in a sense, we might all be looking at exactly the same thing, but having very different experiences of that very thing.
Yeah.
And when you start to realize that, one, you can't, like Debra says, the okayness is like the core of who we are, like that is untouchable. It's like you then seem to worry less about whatever form thought is taking of you, whatever feelings you're feeling that moment, because you know that ultimately, even if you can't see it right in that moment, there is a safety net below you. So there's no way that psychologically at your core you can be harmed. So that's what I'm hearing what you're saying, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
So Debra, I don't know, I'd love to hear you sort of have a stab at this. Like, what are the three principles? How might you explain them?
Well, like Ali said, the simple answer is the three principles are mind, thought, and consciousness. I think the thing to bear in mind is that they are a description for how life works for all of us, and that it only works one way. It is always working that way, and it is always working that way for everybody. And I think if we grasp that has huge implications. And the words and the fact that there are three principles, how we say it, how we share it, becomes irrelevant in many, many ways, because we're trying to point to something that you can't really put words onto. We could call them Sid, Fred, and Joe. It makes no difference what it is. It's what we are pointing to is this resilience within us, the fact that there is this force, this energy that we are a part of. Very much it's this. And I know, before I came across this, I really thought that what was happening out in the world was happening to me, and that things could happen to me. And actually seeing that life doesn't work that way. Life is coming through me and being projected out there, not starting out there and coming towards me. We've kind of got it backwards, and we have a lot of things backwards. This whole, we should worry about our children so that we seem to have these things back to front. And once we kind of switch that around, it really has massive implications in our lives. And it is, to me, is very much like, because life comes through us in that way, we get very mesmerized by what is going on out here. When our children are upset, if something goes wrong, if something happens, we are really, we're bought into the story, and we're very mesmerized with what is going on here. And what I have seen is that actually there's something going on in the other direction. There's something creating all this. This is happening out here, and there's something back here that's creating all this. And just being curious, just taking our eyes off this for a minute and looking to what is creating this experience it does almost set off some kind of magic reaction. It is almost like that. It does kind of, whoa, other things just happen when we look in that direction. Because I don't think it's something our mind can't quite grasp the principles. Our mind can't quite grasp what it is we're pointing towards. But if we are open enough to see that there is something, and because it is a truth, and because it is in all of us, because it is what we all are, if we do that, we see it. It's like you can't avoid seeing something. And even when people talk to you and kind of say, I've lost the principles, or the principles aren't working for me, these kind of things, it's just not how it is. And again, it's just gently pointing people back to the truth of our existence, the truth of what's going on, and aligning with that truth, which we naturally do because it is who we are. So as soon as somebody gives us, again, back to this as soon as we're given the chance to self-right, we're in. It's what we want. It's what we've been looking for. It's what, wow, oh yes, we're ready to, we do hear it, we do absorb it, we do want to be that. So.
And I do like what you're saying there, Deborah, because I think that certainly if you're quite new to the inside out understanding, also known as the three principles, often people are looking to fix themselves, to say, okay, what do I need to do the three principles? Or I was feeling upset today, so obviously the three principles, I'm not doing the three principles right. So I'd love just to sort of ask you about that, Debbie. So how do you see the difference then between doing and understanding? Because there is a distinction here that I don't want people to have another thing to feel guilty that they're not doing very well. Like, oh, now I'm not doing the three principles very well. So what are you talking about here?
Well, yeah, that is the key difference, really. The principles aren't something for you to do. You can't lose them, and it's like, the principles are like gravity. Gravity is just what keeps us on this earth. If I pick something up and drop it, I never kind of think, oh, it might go up this time. It's never going to go up, because when we drop something, it goes down. We know that. It's a given, and there's nothing we can do to change that. And we wouldn't kind of say, oh, I've lost gravity. We can't. It's there. It's going to happen. And the principles are the same. They're not, the principles don't make us have a happy life. The principles don't make us do things right. It's not if we do the principles, we're doing this right. The principles are a pre-existing thing that were there before us and will be there after we've gone. They are just a fact. So they're just pointing to, this is how life works. This is what's really going on. And when we understand how something works, we naturally do it better. It's not so, we don't have to think about doing it better. We don't have to try to do it better. When we align with how it works, it's a done deal. We're already doing it differently. And so it absolutely isn't something to beat yourself up for. It isn't. And it's like these conversations that we're having now, people, even if they don't recognize it, people will be taking little gems from this. Things will be kind of, seeds will be planted. They will be seeing little things. And I mean, that's the whole reason we're here. I know, the whole reason we're actually having this conversation is somebody might hear this and somebody might just hear something within themselves. And it's often the throwaway comments. I mean, I've spent the weekend at a retreat and listened to some amazing speakers and done some really, really lovely things. At the end of it, we were walking to a coffee shop, and a throwaway comment that somebody said that the speaker I was just chatting to him, and Rudy Kennard, and he just said some passing thing about always being okay. And it just hit me. I just heard it in that moment. So I think it's just being in these conversations and just being light and curious and allowing is all you need to do to begin to get an understanding of this. Because it's just there and it's waiting for you.
That's lovely, Deborah. And I like that, Ali, it's almost like being light and curious about parenting, I guess, is probably in our children is maybe what we can take from this. So we're going to move towards wrapping up. If there are any questions, please let us know. But Ali, I just wanted to sort of get a bit of a wrap up from you, really. So I guess if you were to share what, in a nutshell, what's been so important for you as a parent around understanding this resilience, if you could just share that again so we can just reinforce that message.
Yeah, sure. One of the key things for me is that whole sense of, I just think that to be in the presence of someone who's having any kind of meltdown, whether that's a child or an adult or a grown child or whatever, and to know that those feelings can't hurt either one of you, that's got to be the most powerful thing we can do for anybody, is if we can sit in that space knowing they're okay, knowing the okayness, knowing that safety net, knowing that these feelings cannot hurt them, that we're always psychologically safe. Like, that to me is the greatest gift we can give our children and probably anyone else. That's been one of the biggest things for me, for sure.
And we really ought to point people as well to Sid Banks, who was the person who had an enlightenment experience that articulated for the first time, I guess, what we're actually pointing to, and in a way I think that made it very understandable for people. And one of the things that Sid Banks said is that and I might have not got the quote exactly right, so correct me if I haven't, but if people just realise not to be frightened of their experience, that alone would change the world. And I flipped it slightly for me, because the thing that really lands for me is like, I am no longer frightened of any feelings I have, and that's changed my world. It's like, I'm okay with my feelings now. I prefer not to feel all crappy and insecure and all that other stuff. Honestly, I'd prefer not to. But it doesn't frighten me in the way that it used to. I used to think I had to battle it or not, kind of shut the door on it or make sure it didn't come in. It was like, but now I'm not frightened of it. And that's what I'm hearing you say, Ali. Is that fair to say?
I think that's one of my favourite quotes of all time ever. And I can never quite get it quite right either. But yeah, it's... if everyone just learned to not be afraid of their experience, and in parenting or in any relation, I guess we're not just afraid of our experience, we're afraid of their experience, and then we're afraid of our experience of their experience, and suddenly it's just all this afraidness of experience going on. And I think that's absolutely it. Just to know that we are psychologically safe all the time. We don't have to fix or change our own or anyone else's feelings. They'll come and they'll go in their own good time. And the okayness will always return at the right time. That to me is it. That's everything in a nutshell.
That's great, Ali. And Deborah, if we could have a sort of a reflection from you, sort of just a parting comment before we wrap up about parenting and resilience and our children and resilience.
Well, I mean, it was mind blowing to me when I saw the resilience of myself and my children. And I think if any parent who begins to see that and begins to wake up to the fact of resilience in our children, it will just be a whole different ball game. It will be a whole lighter, more pleasant, more playful experience, because you know, when you, like Ali said, when you know there's nothing to be afraid of, you can just play. This is just, you know, it feels like, life feels like a really, really, really great game. And like all games, you know, they have their moments when you're kind of like, oh no, I'm going to lose, or I didn't, you know, that's not how I wanted it to happen. We have those, but that's part of the fun of it, isn't it? You know, you're kind of out there and you're doing. And I just think it's really, really, it's fun. I just love having fun with my children. And as I said, it's my son's birthday today, and we're going to go out as a family in a bit, and that's what we're going to do. We will have fun. We will just have some fun. And that to me is what life is about. And when you know you haven't got to be scared, that's all there is. That's what's there. That's what kind of shows up. Fun
As a parent. That sounds awesome. So guys, I want to know a bit more about how people can link up with you. So I'm going to ask you that in a second, but I just want to point to a couple more webinars that people might be interested in. If you've not come across the Web of Wellbeing, wow, it's a project. You can check it out on Facebook. You can look at Web of Wellbeing, the website. And this is all about mental health and resilience in young children. And there's a webinar this evening looking at managing Christmas with all the stuff that goes on, the emotional stuff in the background that can sort of push all your buttons, how you might manage the festive season, being the best you can and having fun, I guess, which is what Deborah has just said. And you can find out about that on the Facebook page, Wow, Web of Wellbeing, that webinar. That's this evening. We've got another webinar, Coaching Connect has got another webinar, which is looking at the mental health of young people. That's this Thursday evening at 6:30, and that's with Anka Herman and also Michael Brown. So one of the things that we are really passionate about, there is a lot of news at the moment about mental stress and mental illness with our young people, and also with the people who care for our young people. And we really see that if we could point people in the direction of, I guess, ultimately the okayness and resilience that resides within, that we can make a difference in our way. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please join us on Thursday evening. And to Deborah and Ali, if people want to hook up with you in the future and want to learn more about you, how can they do that?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Well, I'm on Facebook, Debra Simmons. I have a Facebook page, debrasimmons.co.uk. I've got a website, debrasimmons.co.uk. You can probably find me through Coaching Connect. I'm on because I'm from the conference that we did. And I've got a YouTube channel, again, Debra Simmons as a YouTube channel where I talk about this kind of thing. And we're going to have the roles reversed, and I'm actually going to do, for my things, I'm going to do a webinar with Liz Wednesday, tomorrow evening. Is that tomorrow? Yeah, at 7 o'clock. And yeah, so because she's just been having the questions here, but actually she's quite an amazing person herself, and I know when she came across the principles, a lot of things changed for her. So I'm really excited to kind of turn the tables on you and find out. So and that is on, there's information about that on my Facebook page, debrasimmons.co.uk, if you want to.
Great. That's great, Deborah, and I'm looking forward to that on Wednesday. And Ali, how can people find out about you?
Yeah, the same really. I've Ali Scott. I have a Facebook page where I post everything, and my website is aliscottcoaching.com as well. And I'm also linked up with Coaching Connect too.
Yes. And I would really recommend, if you haven't seen the videos from the conference, the short talks that both Ali and Debra did, 15 minutes each, really impactful videos. They're on Coaching Connect. You can see them on Coaching Connect, and I'd really recommend you take a look. So guys, I just want to say thank you for the participants that have joined us today. Really enjoyed it. And thank you very much to Debra Simmons and Ali Scott for joining us on this talk about resilient children and resilient parenting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.